When the wedding invitation arrived at my parents' house, my name wasn't on it. I noticed it immediately. The cream envelope, gold lettering, my sister Anaya's name glowing proudly in the center. My mother's hands trembled as she opened it, excitement shining in her eyes. My father leaned in, smiling, already planning which relatives to call. I stood a few steps back, waiting and waiting, but my name never appeared, not as a +1, not as family, not even as an afterthought. The silence that followed was louder than any argument we'd ever had. My mother finally looked up at me, her smile faltering. Maybe it's inside? I already knew it wasn't. That evening, my phone buzzed. One message from Anaya. Anaya, it's better if you don't come to the wedding. No explanation, no apology. Just a decision, final and cold. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this was deliberate. Growing up, Anaya had always been the golden one. Perfect grades, perfect friends, perfect life. And me? I was the risk taker. The one who left home early, who refused the safe job, who worked in silence while everyone assumed I'd failed. I hadn't failed. I just hadn't told anyone what I was building. I typed slowly. Me, why? 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Then finally, Anaya, I don't want questions. I don't want distractions. This is my day. Distractions, that's what I was to her. I locked my phone and went for a walk, letting the evening air burn my lungs. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself weddings were overrated. I told myself I didn't need their approval. But lies don't heal, they just echo. The days leading up to the wedding were unbearable. Relatives called non-stop, talking excitedly about venues, guest lists, and very important person attendees. Apparently, Anaya was marrying into influence. Her fiancé's family had connections, business leaders, senior officials, and yes, politicians. My absence became noticeable. Why aren't you attending? Are you sick? Did something happen between you and Anaya? I smiled. I deflected. I stayed silent. Then, 2 nights before the wedding, my mother came to my room. She didn't sit down. She didn't scold me. She just looked tired. She says you didn't support her, my mother said quietly. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. I've supported her my whole life, I said, just not publicly. My mother nodded slowly. She didn't argue. Maybe, deep down, she knew. The wedding day arrived without me. I stayed home dressed casually, telling myself it was just another day. At 9:47 p.m. my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Hello? I said. A calm, authoritative voice replied. Is this Arav Malhotra? Yes, this is Governor Rajiv Mehra. The world seemed to stop. I was given your number by my office after reviewing the development proposal you submitted last year. He continued, I wanted to speak with you personally. My heart pounded. That proposal, everyone had dismissed it. Even my family had laughed. I understand tonight is sensitive for you, the governor said, his tone deliberate. But I thought you should know. Your project has been approved. Approved. I'll be attending the wedding reception, he added. And I was hoping to meet you there. I swallowed. I wasn't invited, I said quietly. There was a pause. Then the governor said something that changed everything. Then that, he said calmly, is about to become a very interesting problem. Outside, fireworks lit the sky from the wedding venue miles away. Inside, my phone vibrated again. A new message. Anaya, where are you? The governor is asking for you. For the first time in years, I smiled. Not out of bitterness, but clarity. They hadn't wanted me there. But power, it seemed, did. The drive to the wedding venue felt unreal, like I was moving through someone else's life. Traffic slowed as luxury cars lined the entrance, chauffeurs in black suits, guests dressed in silk and diamonds, flashes of cameras capturing the perfect evening. I parked farther away, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the gates with nothing but the governor's words echoing in my head. That is about to become a very interesting problem. At the entrance, a security guard stopped me. Invitation, sir. I don't have one, I said calmly. He frowned, already waving another guest through. Then, I'm afraid. Before he could finish, a black government vehicle rolled up beside us. The guards stiffened instantly. A senior official stepped out, scanning the area before his eyes landed on me. Arav Malhotra? He asked. Yes, he's with us, the official said firmly. The guard's face drained of color as the gate opened wide. Inside, the wedding glittered with excess. Crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors. A live orchestra played softly while waiters moved like shadows between guests. Laughter floated through the air, carefree, confident, privileged, and then silence. People noticed me. Whispers followed as I walked past tables filled with relatives who hadn't seen me in years. Some stared in confusion, others in discomfort, a few in recognition. My mother saw me first. Her eyes widened, hand flying to her mouth. Arav, she whispered, disbelief and relief colliding in her voice. My father stood abruptly, scanning behind me as if expecting someone else. What are you doing here? He asked, not angry, just stunned. I was invited, I replied simply. Before he could question that, a commotion rippled near the stage. Anaya had seen me. She froze mid-laugh, champagne glass trembling in her hand. Her smile collapsed, replaced by something sharp and panicked. She moved toward me quickly, heels clicking too loudly on the floor. What are you doing here? She hissed under her breath. I told you not to come. I met her eyes steadily. I was asked to... By who? She snapped. Do you have any idea how this looks? Before I could answer, a voice cut through the tension. Mr. Malhotra. The governor had arrived. The entire hall turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Phones were discreetly raised. The governor walked toward us with composed authority, his presence commanding respect without effort. He stopped in front of me and extended his hand. It's good to finally meet you in person, he said warmly. I shook his hand, feeling Anaya stiffen beside me. I wanted to congratulate you, the governor continued, his voice carrying. Your proposal is one of the most forward-thinking initiatives I've reviewed this year. We need people like you. People stared openly now. Anaya's face had gone pale. Her fiancé stepped closer, confused. Governor Mera, we're honored. Yes, the governor said politely, barely acknowledging him. But tonight I came to speak with Arav. The name landed like a thunderclap. My mother covered her mouth again. My father stood frozen. Anaya finally found her voice. There must be some misunderstanding, she said tightly. My brother, he hasn't been involved in anything significant. The governor turned to her slowly. I assure you, he said evenly, there is no misunderstanding. He gestured toward me. This young man submitted a development framework that addresses housing, employment, and sustainable infrastructure in one integrated plan. It impressed an entire panel. Silence. The orchestra had stopped playing. I felt every eye in the room on me. Relatives who once dismissed me, guests who had never heard my name, people who now recalculated their opinions in real time. Anaya's grip tightened on her glass. You never told us, she whispered to me. You never asked, I replied quietly. The governor insisted I join him at the main table. As we walked, people stepped aside instinctively. Conversations buzzed behind us, speculations spreading like wildfire. Who is he? Why didn't anyone mention this? That's the bride's brother. At the table, the governor spoke openly about the project, about potential funding, about timelines, about national impact. Each word carved deeper into the illusion my family had built about me. Anaya barely touched her food. Halfway through the evening, she pulled me aside. You humiliated me, she said, voice shaking. I looked at her, not with anger but clarity. You told me not to come because you thought I'd embarrass you. You never imagined this outcome." Her eyes filled with something close to regret. "I didn't know, that's the problem," I said. "You never wanted to." She had no answer. Later, as the governor prepared to leave, he turned to my parents. "You should be very proud," he said sincerely. "Your son has a rare mind and rare patience." My father's voice broke. "We are," he said quietly. When the governor finally departed, the hall erupted again, but the tone had changed. Respect replaced dismissal. Curiosity replaced mockery. People approached me with smiles that hadn't existed before. Anaya watched from across the room, realization settling in painfully. For years, she had believed success was loud, visible, and decorated. She never considered that real power often arrives quietly, right when you least expect it. And that night, the wedding she tried to exclude me from became the place where everything turned. After the governor left, the wedding resumed, but it was no longer the same celebration. Laughter returned cautiously, conversations resumed in hushed tones, and glances kept drifting in my direction. I felt like an unexpected exhibit no one knew how to label. I stayed mostly quiet, standing near the edge of the hall, watching the family I'd once felt invisible and now struggled to understand who I was. My mother approached me slowly, as if afraid I might disappear again. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked softly. I exhaled. "Because every time I tried, no one listened." She flinched, not defensively but with recognition. I told her everything then. About the years of working in obscurity, about the rejections that taught me resilience, about the proposal I submitted quietly, knowing if I failed, at least the disappointment would be mine alone. "I didn't want praise," I said. "I just didn't want doubt." My mother reached for my hand, gripping it tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "We thought silence meant failure." "It didn't," I replied gently. "It meant patience." My father joined us later, his expression heavier than I'd ever seen it. "I should have asked more questions," he said. "I assumed if you were doing well, we would have heard." "That's not how all success looks," I replied. He nodded slowly. "I see that now." Across the hall, Anaya sat alone at the bride's table. Guests still congratulated her, but something essential had shifted. The spotlight she'd so carefully curated had widened, and she wasn't comfortable sharing it. When she finally approached me again, her voice lacked its earlier edge. "Everyone keeps asking about you," she said quietly. "About your work." I didn't respond immediately. "I didn't mean to erase you," she continued, struggling to hold her composure. "I just didn't want anything unpredictable." I met her gaze. "I've been unpredictable my whole life. That doesn't make me disposable." Her eyes glistened. "I thought I was protecting my image, and I paid the price," I said calmly. She nodded, tears finally slipping free. "I was wrong." Later that night, I stepped outside for air. The city lights shimmered in the distance, the noise of celebration muffled behind glass doors. For years, I'd carried the weight of being misunderstood, of being reduced to assumptions. And suddenly, all of it had surfaced, uninvited, undeniable. Anaya joined me on the terrace. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I considered the question honestly. "No, but I won't shrink myself again to make you comfortable," she nodded. "I don't deserve forgiveness tonight. I'm not offering it," I said gently. "Not yet, but I'm offering honesty." She accepted that. The next morning, my phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from relatives, from distant cousins, from people who once avoided my calls. "We didn't know. We misjudged you. So proud of you." I read them all without responding, not out of bitterness, but clarity. Validation delayed is not the same as validation earned. At breakfast, my father finally said something that surprised me. "We want you involved," he said, "in family decisions, in conversations, in the future." I looked at him steadily. "Only if I don't have to disappear again to fit in." "You won't," he promised. I believed him, but trust rebuilds slowly. That afternoon, I received another call from the governor's office. The project was moving forward faster than expected. A press announcement was planned. Committees would be formed. "You'll be very visible now," his assistant said. I smiled faintly. "I'm ready." When I ended the call, Anaya watched me from across the room. "You always were," she said quietly. The wedding photos appeared online that evening. In one image, the bride and groom smiled at the camera. In another, further back, the governor stood beside me, hand on my shoulder. The comments exploded. "Who is he? Why didn't we hear about him earlier? That's the bride's brother." Anaya saw them too, and for the first time she understood what it felt like to be overlooked. That night, I packed my bag to leave. As I stood by the door, my mother hugged me tightly. "Don't stay away so long this time." "I won't," I said, "but I won't stay invisible either." My father nodded. Anaya stood quietly, eyes lowered. "I'm proud of you," she said at last. I met her gaze. "Be proud without needing to compete." She nodded, understanding at last. As I stepped into the night, I realized something powerful. Being excluded had hurt, but it had also freed me. I no longer needed a seat at someone else's table. I had built my own. The days after the wedding moved faster than anything I'd experienced before. What had once been a quiet life of planning and patient effort transformed into a whirlwind of meetings, interviews, and strategic discussions. The governor's office followed through on every promise. Committees were formed, funding structures outlined. My proposal, once ignored, was now dissected with precision by experts who treated my ideas with respect. I should have felt overwhelmed. Instead, I felt grounded. Years of working in silence had prepared me for this exact moment. I didn't need to adjust to pressure. I had lived in it. At the first official meeting, I noticed how differently people spoke to me. Titles mattered, voices lowered, opinions softened when I spoke. Influence, I realized, wasn't loud. It was subtle, earned, and deeply uncomfortable for those who underestimated you. At home, the shift was just as noticeable. My parents called more often, not with concern but curiosity. They wanted to understand my work, my thinking, my long-term vision. For the first time, our conversations weren't about whether I was settled or successful. They were about purpose. Anaya called too. At first, she kept the conversation short, awkward, polite, then gradually more honest. "I didn't realize how much weight my words carried," she admitted one evening. "I thought excluding you would make things simpler." "Nothing about erasing someone makes life simpler," I replied. She sighed. "I see that now." Public attention grew steadily. Articles appeared online. My name appeared in headlines next to phrases like innovative thinker and visionary planner. I read them quietly, aware of how fragile public opinion could be, but also aware that this time, the foundation was solid. One afternoon, I was invited to speak at a regional forum. When I stepped onto the stage, I thought about the wedding night. The confusion, the whispers, the stunned silence. This time, the silence was anticipation. I spoke not about success, but about patience, about how often society mistakes quiet for failure, about how many capable people are overlooked because they don't fit the expected narrative. The applause felt different, not celebratory but reflective. Afterward, several young professionals approached me. "Your story sounds like mine," one said. "I've been invisible too," I smiled. Invisible doesn't mean insignificant. At home, the family dynamic continued to evolve. Anaya visited one afternoon without warning. "Ingi." She sat across from me, twisting her fingers nervously. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, "about how I treated you, about how easily I believed my version of success was the only one." I listened without interrupting. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued, "but I want you to know I'm trying to change. That's all anyone can do," I replied. She nodded, relief softening her face. Not everyone was pleased with my rise. Extended relatives who once dismissed me now tried to align themselves. Some offered hollow praise. Others asked for favors thinly disguised as congratulations. I declined politely. Respect given only after recognition is transactional. I had learned the difference. One evening, I received an invitation to a national advisory panel. The governor himself would be present. As I read the email, I thought back to Anaya's message. Don't come to the wedding. I smiled, not bitterly but knowingly. If I hadn't been excluded, that night might have passed quietly. I might never have received that call. The irony wasn't lost on me. Rejection had redirected my path, sharpened it. At dinner that night, my father raised a quiet toast. To growth, he said, and to learning when we were wrong. My mother nodded. Anaya looked at me, her eyes steady. To my brother, she added, who didn't become smaller when we couldn't see him. The words settled deeply. Later, alone, I reflected on the transformation. I hadn't changed who I was. I had simply stopped hiding. And in doing so, I'd forced everyone else to adjust. A year after the wedding, I stood in a room I never imagined I'd enter, not as a guest, not as an observer, but as a decision maker. The National Advisory Council chamber was quiet, serious, and deliberate. People didn't speak to be heard here. They spoke to be understood. As I took my seat, I felt no rush of triumph, only calm. This was what I'd worked for, not recognition but relevance. The project had grown beyond its original scope. What began as a proposal on ignored letterhead had turned into a living framework. Housing developments breaking ground, employment centers opening, policies being shaped with real-world consequences. Every signature I placed carried weight. Every meeting shaped lives I would never meet. Power, I had learned, was not dramatic. It was consistent. My family watched from a distance now, not out of exclusion but respect. They no longer asked where I was going in life. They asked how they could support me. The difference mattered. Anaya changed too. She no longer introduced me as my brother who works in planning. She said my name with certainty, with pride that wasn't borrowed. One evening she admitted something that stayed with me. I used to think love meant standing in the spotlight, she said. Now I think it means stepping aside when someone else deserves it. I didn't respond right awe. Growth doesn't need applause. The governor called me again, not with instructions but curiosity. You've handled attention well, he said. Most people let it define them. I spent too long without it, I replied. I learned not to depend on it. He laughed softly. That's why you're still here. The wedding venue came up in conversation months later. Someone joked about how strange that night had been, how unexpected. I smiled politely but didn't elaborate. Some moments don't need retelling. They live in consequence. What I understood now, fully, was this: I hadn't been invited to the wedding because I didn't fit the story they wanted to tell. But life isn't innate to performance. It's a process. And the people who matter, Don, it asks you to shrink so they can shine. They make room or they lose relevance. On the anniversary of the wedding, I received a message from Anaya. Anaya, I still think about that night. Not with shame anymore, but gratitude. It changed me. I replied simply, me, it changed me too. That evening, I sat alone on my balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below. Somewhere out there, people were being overlooked, underestimated, told not to come, to the room, to the table, to the future. I hoped my work would change that, not loudly, but permanently. I no longer waited for invitations. I no longer explained my silence. I had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't prove your worth by being included. You prove it by building something that makes inclusion irrelevant. And when I finally stood up and went inside, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. They told me not to come to the wedding, but I arrived exactly where I was meant to be. More stories will keep coming, so please don't forget to like and subscribe.